Okay, we're live. Good to see everybody. Want to let everyone know who's been watching this over the past few months that probably either by the next episode in 2 weeks or maybe the one after in a month, there will be a whole opening montage. There will be theme music. I had originally tried to license Hello, It's Me from my friend Todd Rundgren, but he doesn't own his own publishing anymore. So that went away. So I have a friend that's going to write opening theme, closing theme, and we're going to have a video montage of what it means to be connected. But right now, here I am dropping in again. It's great to be here. We have an amazing guest today. So I'm going to do a short thing that I did the other day. We had California. For those of you who may have attended online, we had a online session a week ago about AI recommendation and AI curation. But I did a shout out to a friend of mine that I met in California 4 years ago. This is Juki. This is a kid's music player that's coming out in a couple months. And all you do is drop a little token or a figurine on top of it and it plays music. I won't do it right now, but I'm very excited that we're about less than 2 months away now from launching version 2 here in the US. And I would say we're doing it because I got involved about 2 months ago after knowing Theodore Morescu for about 4 years now. And so that's very exciting for me. But I want to go right to Helen now and bring Helen in. Not Helen, Hazel, I'm sorry. I was with a person that Hazel knows last night named Helen. Jeremiah, if you can bring Hazel in. Boy, that is terrible.
Ted, how's it going?
You can call me Fred. You know, Bob. Call me Bob. I just said Helen. Do you know Helen Sartori?
Oh, I've lost your audio, Ted. You're muted.
Am I muted? Can you hear me? I can hear you. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
I can't hear you at all, but I did read
Jeremiah,
your lips
can
just
you
then
hear us?
saying I can hear you perfectly. Maybe is Jeremiah going to help us out?
Are you there? It's technology, folks. Jeremiah, are you there? Can you hear me?
Gosh, the host has left.
Can you hear me?
I also can't see who's here. That's very unnerving.
Can you
and I also don't mind that Ted called me Helen. I get Helen, Heather, Hazel, any unusual H beginning name.
Jeremiah, can you hear me?
Can you hear both? Can both of you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, I can hear both of you, so I'm not completely sure what's going on.
Hey, Ted, are you there? Can you hear me?
Can you hear Jeremiah? Well, Jeremiah, talk. Ask Hazel a question. This is fun, folks.
Hazel, can you hear me?
She's not hearing either of us.
Okay, Hazel. Okay.
Oh.
Ted, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. So, I think Hazel left, and I think she's going to re-enter. So when she re-enters,
hopefully it'll all be fine, folks.
Okay. I apologize.
Anyway, I got to spend, for those of you who may know Chris Howard from The Rattle, I got to visit The Rattle in LA here that opened on March 10th last year and shut down on March 13th when COVID began. The pandemic officially shut everything down here in LA. So they've had 15 months to regroup. And I'm telling you, if you are in LA and you're either an artist or an entrepreneur, or you're in London, get involved with The Rattle. Chris is so inspirational. We spent 3 hours last night, and I wanted to just keep going. Hazel should be back with us in the moment. I don't have any. I was going to revert to music news, but music tech news, media tech news. But I guess the most important thing, and I was joking with John Cesaro and a couple other people that I was come up with the title for my book, going the unbearable burden of always being right. Because 10 years ago, I got in major arguments with people from film studios that letting people stream movies at home would not hurt box office, but in fact could possibly help box office. And this past weekend, Black Widow here in the US did 80 million in theaters and another 60 million on Disney Plus. This is pretty amazing. It really is. They can coexist. There can be a home audience that doesn't want to go to the theater for whatever reason, babysitters, whatever, and you can still do a great business, with tentpole movies at the theater. I don't know what the financial arrangements are. He said as he took a sip. Can you hear me now?
I could totally hear you. That was so weird. I have no idea what happened.
Yeah, I heard you perfectly, and Jeremiah heard you perfectly, and he heard anyway. We're back. So Helen, Hazel, Henrietta, you're back. That's great.
All the H's. Good to be here.
It's great. I was talking about this weekend with Black Widow that Black Widow did 80 million in theaters and another 60 million on online on Disney Plus.
Yeah, they got $39.99 of my dollars. So I bought into that, gave it a whirl.
And yet they still did a total of 200 and some million worldwide. So the idea of home streaming, that it's either streaming or in theater experience, and that we would kill the theaters if we did streaming, is totally false. That was. So I was just saying, as you were gone, that I said to John Cesaro yesterday, the new working title of my book is "The Unbearable Burden of Always Being Right."
Each chapter can just be about a different time you were correct.
Streaming was going to kill the music business. Streaming was going to kill film. Streaming was going to kill television. AI recommendation was going to put everybody, music critics and curators, out of work. And on that point, it is my profound pleasure to introduce the CEO and co-founder of Musiio, Ms. Hazel Savage, live from Singapore, which I'm not in Singapore, but I could fake it here.
Yeah.
So as we've talked about, my style of having a guest on is we just met for the first time at a cocktail party, and we went and grabbed a table and sat down. And so tell me about yourself. We've never met before. So in that stead, I guess the first question I have is, how did you get into music? Who gave you your first break? And if you hadn't gotten that first break, what might you have been doing now? What did your parents want you to be doing?
Oh, great series of questions. So I don't come from a music industry family background. I don't come from even a musician background, although I did get my first guitar when I was 13, but I am not a particularly talented musician. I should say that up front. So who really gave me my first break? I would have to say, I would probably give that credit to a guy called Alan Stevenson, who was my boss at Shazam. And I was working at HMV, the record store, full-time job, minimum wage, stacking shelves.
But how did you end up at HMV? Go back to HMV. How did you end up at HMV?
Now that was
and not end up working at what you call it? I love the tech hall in the basement. Selfridges.
Oh,
how did you end up at HMV instead of Selfridges?
Well, there's a connection there with Alan, who gave me my break as well, which is HMV was my part-time job while I was at university. I used to work every Saturday and Sunday in a smaller HMV, and then when I finished university, I was like, oh crap, what am I going to do now with my whole life? So I was like, I guess I could just work more hours until I figure it out, and then I was just working full time. And whilst I was working full time, I started going, I don't really want to work in retail indefinitely. So I started sending out CVs to labels, artist management companies, events companies, anything sort of music related. And I applied for this new startup called Shazam, who were just advertising online for, entry-level music juniors. And so I sent my CV in, and it was one of those great CVs you have when you're 20 that basically has like one job on it, and you try and fill the rest out with like all the other stuff you do. I like reading, I like hiking, whatever else you're trying to pad out there. I play in a band, and I'd included all of the gigs I'd ever played, and all of the musicians I'd met and recorded with, who at the time I'd just recorded an album with Kim Fowley, who discovered the Runaways.
Exactly. The notorious Kim Fowley.
The notorious Kim Fowley and I recorded an album once together that's still never seen the light of day, but I'll plan a release at some point. And obviously I wrote that I'd worked with him and in brackets the other artists he's worked with, Motley Crue, Runaways. And apparently that's what caught my future boss's eye on the CV. He said as soon as he saw that, he went, "Oh, a fellow rocker. Let's get this girl in for an interview." So that was kind of how I got the opportunity, and
Right.
he gave it to me.
That's great. Was Will Mills there at the time, or is that later?
Yeah, no, Will Mills was there. So Will Mills was Alan's boss. So I was right on the bottom rung when I started.
And Mayor Roberts, what was his first name?
In which department?
Shazam. He was one of the founders of Shazam.
Oh, yeah. By the time I got there, we were about 25 people. And the founders were all based in the US. So, and I was just crazy.
Were you at that horrible building that looked like a prison on Kensington High Street?
Technically an abandoned hospital, but you're not far off, Ted.
It looked, I now it's like, what, $40 million condos or something. But they tore it down and built that amazing, $5 million studio apartment building.
I mean, the real estate was incredible, but obviously the location was fantastic. We were right opposite Universal Music, and I think that's why they chose it. But inside, it was awful. Like
a National Health Service. It looked like a government. I went there a couple times. So, how long did you stay at Shazam?
4.5 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And the next move was across the street?
Yes. Well, across the street, but on the other side of the globe. So the next move was Universal, but in Australia.
Okay.
So yeah, so I had to go all the way over to the other side of the world to get in on the label game, because they wanted someone who'd had a little bit of digital experience, and I'd spent 4 years working for a really cutting edge app. So that was good fun. Never been to Australia before, but they gave me the job, and I was like, how bad can it be? I'll go check it out.
And what years was this?
That was, I think, 2014.
So was Beth there?
Beth Appleton.
Appleton. I'm sorry, I don't mean to speak. I always talk about it's bad to speak in shorthand. Beth Appleton is one of the most wonderful people I've ever known.
I like it. It keeps me on my toes. Actually, she had literally left about 2 months before I got there to take up a role with Warner. And then when I arrived, she reached out to me and we had a meeting. And I have a really vivid memory of my boss that had hired me going, "You better not go to Warner." And I was like, to me, it was wild that I would get a job at one label, let alone that 2 months later, someone else would offer me another job. But I guess now I know that was maybe a realistic risk.
Right. I met her in 2002 in Sydney when she was at EMI, and she had just started in digital, and she was wonderful. And I said, literally, that was somebody that, you're going to do great things. Mm-hmm. And I corresponded with her a couple of days ago, congratulating her on the
Jackster.
I can always pronounce it wrong. Jackster. Jacksta. On that, I swore I thought she was going over to Sony.
Same. I thought she would be picked for the top job at Sony, but I'm also delighted because I know Jackie, the founder of Jackster, as well, and she actually showed me what she was working on back when I worked at Pandora in Australia. So I've seen the whole life cycle of what she's been building. So I actually think that's a great choice for Beth. Really cool.
Right, it is. I met Jackie 4 years ago through Dick Huey. When because Dick works with him, and I thought it was a monumental task. I thought she was up for the task, but other people have tried. She succeeded where other people have tried and gone.
Yeah. Sometimes
there's too much politics. It's not the technology; it's the politics around it. So you went from Universal to Pandora. I'm not going to ask where you went. You tell me where you went. You went from Universal.
No, Universal to Pandora.
And how was that?
It was good. Actually, I might have had, it's not on my CV anymore, but I think I did like a 3 months I freelanced for a fitness company doing their social media, because I was still very much in the phase of just got to make money, right? Got to pay the bills. But 3 months working at a fitness company doing their social media, it's not on the CV anymore. I got a few jobs like that, like my paper round. That's not on the CV anymore. So yeah, Pandora was kind of the next big stop, and I was there for about 2.5 years, and that was in Australia as well. Right. So at the time, it was when they were trying to reopen the global markets, and so Australia and New Zealand was kind of the test bed for that. So that was really exciting, because it was kind of like working for a startup, but with a massive parent company in the US that meant you had a very good chance of success and you weren't going to run out of money. So that was a great place to be. Yeah.
Going back to the original question, which either I missed or you, or when you went to university, what were you majoring in? What was your degree in? And had you not ended up at HMV, what might you be doing now?
Oh, great question. My university degree was in English literature and politics. It was just a generic dual major in something I was borderline interested in. I feel like I went to university because I didn't know what else I was supposed to do. You know, people go to school, then they go to college, then they go to university, then they get a job. And I was like, okay, well, from lack of anything else to do, I will follow this path for the time being. But I didn't do particularly well at university, and I didn't enjoy it, which is weird because, you know, I often feel like when you meet people who went to uni, they were like, oh, it was the best time of my life. It was amazing. And I just hated it. I didn't like the classes. I didn't like the people. I didn't like anything about it. So for me, actually, while I was at university, my respite was Saturday and Sunday working in the record store, because that was with people I liked. That was doing something that I felt had purpose, even though it was, you know, a minimum wage job. And that to me felt like more like who I was, more productive. So if I hadn't done what I ended up doing, I don't think I still would have done anything with politics and English. I feel like my degree is very much a check mark, usually on a visa form. Do I have it? Yes, I do. Does it matter? Not to me, other than government officials who are more likely to let me work abroad because I have it. But one thing that I always thought I would be quite interested in if I hadn't gone into music, quite fancied the idea of being a long distance truck driver.
I love it.
And my dad did not love this idea. My dad was like, not sure that's really what you should be aiming for. But I just thought it'd be great. I love to drive. I love to see the sights. I love to listen to music. I can think of worse jobs. So there you go. That would have been my backup.
You just gave me an idea. You just gave me an idea for a whole new business. But I won't tell you exactly what it is. Amazing. That's fantastic. You know, I went to university, but ended up leaving university because I didn't spend much time at university. I was putting on shows and working at a club and booking bands and working at the radio station. And somehow classes didn't fit into it.
Yeah.
So
exactly. That's a bridge to, you know, I do have maybe like a handful, like less than 10 actual good memories about university. And one of them was that I was playing in an all-girl punk band at the time, and we were booked to support the Slits at Newcastle Uni. Okay. And I was like, this is cool as nuts. This is going to be great. And so that's one of my only sort of fond memories. And all I remember was we got up, we did our show, you know, we got off, you know, Ari and the Slits went up. It was amazing. There was such great energy in the show. She did her costume changes on stage, just took all the clothes off, put something else on. And I just walked, and I was backstage afterwards, and she just walked up and she was like, oh, hey, I saw you guys open. Oh, you were great. It was such a wild energy. Like, I really loved it. And I realized, I was like, oh, thank you so much. And I just sort of casually glanced. And she had absolutely nothing on from the waist down, completely naked while she was talking to me.
You know, it's funny. I realized 2 weeks ago I had Martin Atkins on. Do you possibly know Martin?
I don't think I do know Martin.
Martin was in Pill in Public Image Limited.
Got it.
He's from Newcastle.
Oh, very cool.
And he was talking about playing at the Newcastle Men's Club, which was a strip bar. When he was 11 years old, he was the drummer playing for the strippers. When you said Newcastle, wait a minute, who did I just talk about?
Same area.
So I'm going back a little bit because I'm always intrigued with this. When you worked in the record store, were you making recommendations?
Oh, great. Yeah. Yes, a little bit. Because this was back in the day when obviously people would just walk in, and there was various ways that the recommendations would happen. From somebody walked in once. I think I'm gonna tell you the most ridiculous requests I ever got. One woman walked in one weekend and she went, "I was in last week. There was a poster on that wall. I wanted what was on that." And I was like, "Have you got any other information?" She was like, "No." I was like, "I honestly don't know what was on that poster last week. I'm really sorry." But she didn't have any other information.
Right.
And then another time, often people would come in, and I actually worked in a record store when, do you remember that song? Was it Eric Prince, Call on Me? And it had the quite salacious music video of the women in the workout wear. Right. And people would come in and ask if we had the video for that song all the time. And I actually thought the record label did an amazing job because they made that video only available if you bought the triple CD album that they were pushing at the time.
But it came with a DVD. It came with a DVD?
It did. So it was like people came in thinking they were going to get the CD single for a couple of bucks, and they had to drop 30 quid if they wanted to get hold of that video. So there was all sorts. So recommending, often it was a test of memory. Occasionally people would just want to know what's popular. And obviously you can think, well, what have I been selling the most of? What do we have in stock? The orders would help to promote that. So you were almost sort of calculating your own algorithm on the fly.
That's what I'm trying to get better. You're our 12th guest, and 11 guests before you hear way too many stories from me because I'm interviewing you, and I don't want to take up too much time. But I ended up getting a job when I left university. My first real job was I was made the co-buyer for a chain of 34 stores in the U.S. I'd never worked in a record store in my life, so I called one of our managers at one of the stores and said, "Can I come in on Saturdays and work for you? You don't have to pay me. I just want to work behind the counter and interact with customers and see what they buy and why they buy and what influences them." And because I'm 200 years old, as my friend Deadmau5 would say, the albums that were out then were James Taylor's Sweet Baby James, Cat Stevens' Tea for the Tillerman, Elton John's Your Song album, the first Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And I'd go, "Who do you like?" And they would name a couple of things. Go, "You're going to love Cat Stevens. I'm only here on Saturdays. Take it home. Buy it. Take it home. If you don't like it, come back next Saturday. I will personally refund your money." I said, "We don't have a refund policy, but I'm telling you, based on what you told me, you're going to love this." I never had anybody come back with a record, but I really got into, tell me about yourself. Tell me, what do you like? What do you listen to when you're not trying to make anybody else happy? What's your secret passion? And that was recommendation for me early on was, how can I, find you something that works? So we're at Pandora. You leave Pandora. I always know where I interrupted people.
No, I like a story. I don't want too much of me. I get enough of me every day. So I'm happy to hear a little bit more Ted as well, just FYI. But where did I go after Pandora? So after Pandora, I sort of actually, and again, this isn't on the CV. I ended up freelancing for a little bit because I was still in Australia but not working for Pandora. So I ended up taking on a bunch of freelance clients, a really great touring company called MJR. I did a little bit of artist work. I actually went around a few of the labels and trained other record label people how to do media buying, how to buy Facebook adverts, how to buy Google adverts. Because at the time I was just like a a marketer who just did everything, so fully
Right.
hands-on. So I went around and did a bit of like, and I would just pay and I would teach other people how to do that work. And then I got the opportunity to move to Singapore. And so that was coming up 5.5 years ago that I moved then from, and I was happy about it because I was like, well, I went from the UK to Australia and now I'm going Australia to Singapore.
Right.
In my mind, that's like halfway home.
Right.
Like I'm now
Exactly.
1 12-hour flight from Europe instead of 2. So that was a good move for me.
I flew Thai Airlines once to Singapore for Music Matters that we were talking about before the show started for Jesper's thing. And I did it on Thai. And I flew literally, I think I flew from LA, flying toward London, flew like LA to Bangkok or somewhere, and then flew to Singapore. And then they said, oh, you don't get miles for that. And I went, the only reason I did it on, but the airline was nice. But Singapore, the first time I went there, it's amazing. I mean, the food, the contrast between cultures and classes of people there. I mean, it is still very colonial in its feel. I don't know how it is for you on a daily basis, but I was amazed. It was so eye-opening.
I am obviously there is still a lot of the beautiful colonial architecture, like the Raffles Hotel, and and some of my local friends will make fun of me as a British person, for my colonial past, and I just wholeheartedly apologise for my people and our behaviour, which is what you do when you're English. But it's always in good fun.
But you can go from dining at the Ritz-Carlton to going over to the food market on the other side of the bay there and have some of the most amazing street food you've ever had in your life.
Completely. And that, I mean, that is what Singapore's known for as well. It is the foodie capital because the food's amazing and it's great. And it's cheaper to eat out than it is to order food to your home, which is also a nice lifestyle switch that I enjoy. But also, I just really enjoyed moving from Australia to Singapore. I feel like, funnily enough, and almost, I don't know many people who said this, I had a lot of friends in Australia who'd also moved there. A lot of people stay and, get their citizenship, but I never really felt like I fit in that well in Australia. It wasn't really my vibe. I am actually much happier and much prefer Singapore. It's a slightly more sort of aggressive pace of life from a commercial perspective, which I like because I'm a workaholic. And it's also like the time of day with which Singapore operates, like nothing is open early. Everything is open quite late. And Australia is the opposite way. The coffee shops in Australia, they open at like 5 a.m. Right. But you can't get a coffee after 3 in the afternoon for love nor money. Whereas here, nothing opens till like 10 or 11 a.m. And I like that because I don't think anything good happens before that time of day. I'm not even awake. Let
everybody know what time it is where you are right now.
Great question. It is at 3:28 a.m. according to my laptop.
So and someone I talked to a friend of yours yesterday who will remain nameless, who said you basically operate on like UK/East Coast US time.
Yeah, pretty much. So pretty much ever since the pandemic hit, I was like, well, 95% of my clients are in Europe and the US. So, and I'm trying to get them to give me money, right? So I need to be available when they are. And so I've noticed you can do it the other way. You can either get up really super early or you can stay up really super late. And honestly, I was always going to be the super late end of the day. But luckily, because most people do it the other way around, people are always available. I'm like, if someone in LA, I'm like, can you do your 9 a.m.? It's usually a yes, whereas the end of their day, they get pretty booked up. So yeah, I've been doing US hours for the last 1.5 years, but it's going okay.
So let's like breeze through. When you went to Singapore, what was the assignment? But then I want to get to how Musiio. I want to spend the next 30 minutes talking about recommendation of Musiio and everything. But so what brought you to Singapore?
So bizarrely, I was brought over to work for a company called Gavira. Do you remember them?
Now he's suing Spotify right now.
Mate, what is that guy about? But all I can tell you is
I worked for them for 2 months in LA here when they had an office in Westwood.
Yeah.
He was one of, I mean, I'll say he's eccentric. I'll use a kind of, you can describe him. It's hard to describe. When I met him for the first time, I thought I was in the Anarchy TV series.
Oh, I thought you were referring to his more business partner who, and I feel like I could say this now because I don't care. Like, you can Google his like commercial business partner, and he's a guy called Darren, who's mostly just getting sued in Australia for dodgy business practices. But yeah, so this is not one of my finest hours, but I was brought over to work for Gavira. They paid for my relocation. I was coming in to like head up marketing for the region. I got here. I took one look at the books and I was just like, you shouldn't have been hiring anyone. Like, you guys have got no cash. Like, why are you hiring? And then about 4 weeks later,
Gavira Gavira was ad supported downloads or streaming. I can't remember.
Streaming.
It was ad supported. Oh, it was premium Spotify with ads.
Yeah, it was a focus on branded content, and I actually didn't hate the product. I thought the product was quite nice, but also there were all these big business practices that I will say are not illegal in Australia, but they flipping should be, because the way you can move money around in some countries just beggars belief. So there was a lot of stuff going on that I was like, yeah, I don't love that. And so I literally got here, and then about 4 weeks after I landed, they ran out of money and they shut the whole thing down. And so then I spent the next couple of months wrapping up a business, closing a business down, having only worked for them for about 4 weeks. So that was a really weird experience, and not one that I regret. That was a bit wild, but certainly unusual and not really what I'd signed up for. Right.
And so you're there, you're out of work.
I'm here.
And you are one of the most dynamic people I've ever met. I mean, I can name a couple other people but when we met at Meetum a few years ago with Fred Davis, I went with that little cocktail party you had. I was like, yep, she's good.
Oh, thanks, Ted.
No, I mean, I'm serious. I mean, you end up running into a lot of people, and the ones you can tell the ones that are good, and you can tell the ones that are acting.
Well, I like to think I've got some resilience. So here I am in Singapore. I've got no job. I've just spent the last couple of months wrapping up a business with Deloitte, the liquidators. And I just started sending out CVs, anything marketing related, comms related, sending out CVs. And I landed at BandLab Technologies.
With Meng. With Meng Kwok.
Yeah.
Amazing guy. I love it.
So luckily for me, he was running the only other music tech company in Singapore. So I got an interview for that job, and instantly I was like very, very interested in their app product, their mobile product. I mean, he has a whole suite of businesses now under the same umbrella, but it was always the tech part that I was most interested in and excited about.
I met him about 6 years ago. A friend of mine said, when you're in Singapore, I told Meng to get together with you. We had lunch at the Swiss Hotel.
Oh, nice.
And we're up there in the restaurant. And I said, so is your family in music? I ask a lot of questions. I interview everybody, no matter what we're doing, at breakfast, at lunch.
Yeah,
and
sure.
He explained the background of his family, which I won't go into.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was, again, dynamic, but so humble in terms of, he could have said, well, my grandfather and this, and it was only when I asked him about his, his family, or is your other people in music or whatever, that I knew that they were, again, in another whole world in the food business and a bunch of other stuff. But he came over to LA about 8 months, 9 months later, and we hung out for a day, and it was just like hanging out with a friend. He is an amazing businessman, but at least in my experience with him, there was no pretentiousness at all. He was just, and I happened to run into him on Clubhouse about 2 months ago.
Oh, nice.
And I messaged him, and he called me, and it was around midnight my time. And he called me, and we talked for about a half. We just caught up. And so it's a terrible question to ask you, but I'm going to ask, why would you leave there? I thought
well,
from the outside, he's somebody I've always wanted to work with. We haven't done anything together professionally. Socially, I love spending time with him.
Well, I have to tell you, almost as exciting as why I left, but I have to tell you, I had a not dissimilar experience to you when I joined, because when I remember when I interviewed for the job, and I went in and I was like, I've got a bunch of questions because I don't know much about the background of this company or who this guy is. And I remember just being like, obviously because of what had just happened with Gavira running out of money, I was like, okay, new music tech startup. I was like, so what's the cash situation here? How much runway have you got? And he was like, oh, runway's not a problem. And I was like, okay, so who's funding this? And he basically said the equivalent of, you might just want to Google me to get that information. And I was like, okay, I'm picking it up. And then I looked it up later and I was like, oh, okay. So, as well, so coming from the UK, I'm not sort of very familiar with the sort of the Asian dynasty families and who's who and that kind of thing. It's not really part of anything I know. So to me, it was just a guy, right? It's just a regular guy. But then I'm really drilling on all these finance questions going, hey, how you funded this business? I started because I just lost my job because they ran out of money. So I didn't want the same thing to happen again. And then I went and sort of did some.
And then you go, oh my God. I mean, that's one thing. I think I don't know how similar we are, but I think we're similar in that I meet people. And again, I don't, it's not, somebody will call me and say, let's get together, and I'll get together. And my assistant or Maggie will say to me, who are they? I said, I'll find out when I get there. I'll do a short version of a story. Was it, Ben Turner? Ben's involved in +8 with John Acquaviva and Rishi. He manages Richie Houghton, the DJ.
I do know.
So I'm at Ben's event in Ibiza, the International Music Summit, which happens the first weekend of the season every year. And I'm talking about Twitter. And this is like 2008, 2009. And Twitter was about a year old, I think, at the time. And I said to somebody, I really like Twitter. And they said, oh, you should go talk to Richie. He's doing a really cool thing. He's written an API that when he's DJing, it tweets out his set.
Yeah,
and I went, and this was at a time when DJs were being secretive about using Shazam. If they caught you using Shazam, trying to figure out what you were playing, they would ask you to leave. And so I thought it was very cool that he's letting people know what he's playing. But I go over to him and I sit down. Hey, Richie, I'm Ted. And we talk for about a half an hour. I go back and I sit down and someone says, you were talking to Richie? I said, yeah. Richie Houghton. I went, yeah, that's his name. Do you know who he is? And I went, not a clue. I do know what he's doing tech-wise. And they said, Google him. Had I Googled him before I went to sit down with him, it would have been, hi, Mr. Houghton, my name is Ted, and I was wondering if I could talk to you for a minute, and I know you're a very busy I would have been like, going with literally leaning down and bending over because I didn't know who he was. I just dove into it. Same thing what you're talking about with Meng. I didn't know who he was. So what are you doing? How have you been? And what's happening?
I think you and I are cut from the same cloth here, Ted. Because the trick with this has happened to me so many times. But the trick is if you just try and be nice to everyone and just talk to everyone as if they're like a decent person, then it doesn't matter if the person ends up. This happened to me. I was at Mondo 2019, another great conference, and Brian Zisk said, oh, Hazel, Lars, he's on the same panel as you. You got to chat to Lars. He's got an app. And I was like, hey, Lars. And Lars was guy. And he was showing me his email. The only thing I remember thinking was, that's a pretty slick looking app. It turned out it was Lars Rasmussen who invented Google Maps.
Yeah, Sean Ryan, who's at Facebook, calls me one day and he goes, I got somebody you need to meet. I'm doing an email. I'm introducing you. He introduces me to Lars. We get on the phone. We're talking. And I said, why'd you leave Facebook? He goes, I was bored. I said, what'd you do before that? Oh, I was at Google. What'd you do at Google? My brother and I invented Google Maps. And so, now my Google app opened up and asked me what I wanted to. And I'm not talking to you. Anyway, I said, you invented Google Maps. Had you been to, no, not you. Had you been to, stop it. Have you been to his flat in London on Clink Street?
I haven't, no. I've only ever met him in the US.
Oh, so he has a flat on Clink Street next to the Tate Modern, and he has a pontoon boat, like a Somali pirate skiff that he and his partner, his fiance, says they're never getting married, but I don't know. Anyway, they can lower the boat into the Thames and just go out on the Thames. The floor is unfinished, like Norwegian or Swedish wood. I don't think a shoe has ever touched it. But Weave is did you work with Weave at that point?
Well, I've seen the app and I've demoed the product, but we've not worked together.
No, I demo it for people too. We ended up not working together. He was, again, Lars, if you're watching, it's okay. He basically said, why don't you work for me for free so you can tell people that you worked for Lars Rasmussen? And I went, that's okay.
I thought you were going to come back with, why don't you work for me so that you can tell people you've worked for Ted Cohen?
Right. I basically I love the product. I really like him, but it literally was, do you know who I am and do you know what I've done? And I said, I know who you are and I know what you've done, but you got paid for your work. It was an interesting discussion.
Yeah. I guess at the time I met him, obviously I didn't know who he was or what he'd done. Right. And afterwards I was like, oh, that's cool, because that's an amazing product.
And he is cool.
But I think the important thing, or the thing I like to live by, is he could have just been some guy who built an app, and I would have the same level of interest in talking to him.
Right.
Not everyone, if I meet someone, what do you do? Drive a taxi. Great. What do you do? Work in the petting factory. Awesome. I want to know about it. What do you do? I like fishing. Cool. Let's talk about that. It's right. So occasionally you do come across these people.
And you can have a conversation because, you've always impressed me. And the term I use for it is an enlightened generalist. That you can get into a conversation about, a disparate business, but still there's the underlying principles of, distribution, of marketing, of building a customer base. That those ideas are not, unique to music or film or tech. So I find, I sit next to somebody on a plane, if it's from LA to New York or back and forth, I warn them, I go, at any time you want, just fall asleep or put on a pair of headphones. I don't want you to hang yourself like in the movie Airplane. But I love getting into a conversation about what do you do? And you have you can meet, if they're willing to talk to you, the most interesting people sitting next to you.
I agree. Although I have an arrangement with my husband, which is whenever we fly, in most planes, economy, it's 3 seats, right? So the deal is that if we got our seats together, me and my husband, he either gets the aisle or the window, because he doesn't want to talk to anybody that he doesn't already know. And I love a chat. I've met some fascinating people. I think my favorite in recent years was flying from Macau to Singapore, sat next to a sort of professional gambler, but more like gambler for hire. So when someone would fly into Macau and gamble and wanted a friend, he would just fly up and gamble with them. And then he was telling me all about his loyalty cards and his different games and his friends and, his multi-millionaire friend. Oh, I was fascinated. Couldn't get enough of it.
I sat next to a woman on a flight. This is the last story, because I want to die. We're going to go over time-wise, and if it's okay with you, we're going to go over, because I want to spend a lot of time on Musiio. I'm on a flight from New York to LA, and I'm sitting next to a woman who looks like Judi Dench.
Oh,
She's very, very elegant woman, just really elegant. And I quietly start talking to her. I don't do my normal, hey, so are you? And it turns out that she is Mrs. Bing. Mrs. Bing is the Bing family in LA. It's the Bing Theater at the LA Art Museum.
right.
Her son is Stephen Bing, who married Hugh Grant. What's her name? Hugh Grant's ex.
Elizabeth Hurley.
Elizabeth Hurley had a baby. They were a couple for a while.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, what do you do? And I said, I'm working with EMI. And she said, oh, if you're ever in London, I have a bench in Berkeley Square. Go sit on my bench. And I walked around Berkeley Square the next time I went to Wrights Lane when I went to London. And I found her bench and I took a picture of it. I had somebody take a picture of me on the bench and a picture of the plaque. I would hear from her every once in a while. It was the most unlikely acquaintance because this is old. If there is such a thing, it's almost an oxymoron, but old LA money. This is old. And I never did. There was no business to do. It was just, wow. It was like meeting, somebody from the Astor family or from the Vanderbilts.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Well,
so
I want to go and find that bench now. If I go and find the bench,
it's on the side of the park. It's on the horseshoe closest to Oxford Oxford Street.
Got it. Well, I'm going to send a photo to you, so I'll find it and I'll send it to you.
It was wonderful. Anyway, how did Musiio start? How did you get involved? Tell me all about Musiio. We're going to spend the next 30 minutes talking about recommendation and just the amazing work that you've done.
Perfect. So yeah, I started Musiio 3.5 years ago. I actually joined a startup incubator because I got called and invited to come along and would I like to join a startup incubator? And I was like, would I? I don't know. I don't know
as
anything about it. No, as an attendee.
Oh.
But I didn't really know what a startup incubator was at the time. It wasn't really part of my world. But they were offering two things: free coffee, and the guy that used to drum for James Brown was also doing the same cohort, Eric Hargrove. And I was like, so I get to meet this guy? Because I'll join. That sounds cool. And I did. And so Eric's a very good friend now. I even had him write for the Musiio blog a couple of times. He did some stuff for us during lockdown. And so I joined the startup incubator with the idea that I was only ever going to build something in music tech. I don't really know about anything else. And I found I was tidying recently. Everyone's tidying during lockdown, right? So I was tidying belongings and discarding and having a clear out. And I found my original notebook from the very first day at the startup incubator EF. And I found the very first page where I think I'd like written down like my plan of action, and the photo, it said something ridiculous, just like labels, ? Find ML guy. And I was like, what was I was on the right track here. Like first direction, find yourself a tech person. Second direction, how do we cause some minimal disruption, or how do we add value to an industry? That's kind of what I was looking to do. So that was the whole idea at the start. And then when I started working with my co-founder, Aaron, a technical guy from Sweden, who's based in Singapore as well, that's when we collaboratively came up with the idea of, can we teach an AI to listen to music? And if we can, what can we get it to do? Like, what other things can we get it to do? And it really expanded from there. You know, my goal originally was, if we can teach an AI to listen to music, I'd heard the story about Lewis Capaldi's manager finding him on SoundCloud by just listening to everything on SoundCloud that had like 20 or fewer plays. But it took him 7 months. And I was like, but if an AI can do it in a day, that would be good. So that was kind of my first idea, like how much can we automate and how fast can we make things? And then as we built it from there, we started working with our clients and our customers to be able to figure out how to actually turn it into a product. What's something that people would use? And now we offer, we offer tagging, like rich metadata creation. Right. We offer search, for sync companies and publishing companies and record labels. And we offer playlisting recommendations as well. In fact, actually, right now, there's a really cool competition going on across all of APAC. So China, South Korea, Japan, Australia. Vans, the footwear company, is doing a talent search. And that's back-ended by our technology. So,
right. Yeah, we talked about that last week. That's great. That announcement
we did.
So let me ask you this. When you started, you had your experience at Pandora. Mm-hmm. Pandora, I was Tim's first advisor at Pandora when it changed from Savage Beast to Pandora. Mm-hmm. And the one deficiency, while it was great that every song was listened to by somebody and rated by somebody, it wouldn't scale because with the volume of music that comes out, there's not enough people to listen to enough music to do it. So at some point it had to go to a different system. But then there was, as we talked about last week, the California panel, there was Agent Arts with Firefly. There was Mood Agent. There's Musiio. There are a lot. The marketplace has had a few different, people still currently and people that have come and gone. What did you see what the opportunity was? And I'll ask you the tough question. How are you different, or how are you better, or, where do you excel? I don't want you specifically to go, here's why, Ted's AI sucks and we're better, but what do you say? When you're competing, how do you articulate, look, I think, and I'm not going to put anyone's name in, I think Ted's AI is nice. We like it, but here's how we've improved on that approach.
Yeah. So, big question, but I'm smiling as well because I do compete against quite a lot of the other players in the market. If a deal comes up, a search deal on X amount of catalogs or a tagging deal on X amount of tracks, and I don't think I've lost a deal yet. So I think we compete on a couple of things. Firstly, I think we have a slightly larger variety of tags and a higher level of accuracy than some of the competitors. But then the follow-up part of that is I also think our pricing model is perhaps a little bit more competitive. And I say that as well because of the competitors that I'm aware of, and again, I'm not going to name any names.
Right.
I think we might be the only VC funded company. And I have to say, that gave us the ability to, first of all, we raised like $1 million a couple of years ago. And it meant we could grow the team really quickly, build the product really quickly. And we didn't have to charge the very first customer for the whole thing. We just charge what we think it should cost.
Who was your major investor?
They're called Wavemaker Partners.
Right.
It's a VC based in Singapore and LA.
Right. So
I feel like that gave us an edge.
Right. As we talked about last week, if anybody wants to look, the panel that Hazel and I did is up on YouTube. If you search California AI recommendation, it's up there. You have in the marketplace currently, you've got Mood Agent, you've got Ames, you've got Musiio, and there's a few others. It's interesting. They're all basically, you're all basically algorithm based. And one of the things we talked about is you and I and the people that were on the panel last week ideally are doing the panel with Mark next week for a Sync Summit, which is at noon New York time, not noon LA time.
Perfect.
So it's a little better because I called him and asked him to move it for you. And he says, no, wait a minute. Singapore is only, and he gave me whatever noon in New York is 9 o'clock or something.
12. I think we're exactly 12 hours difference with New York right now.
Okay. So it'll be midnight, not 3 a.m.
That works.
We're thinking of sending out a brief of something we're looking for and seeing what everybody comes up with.
Cool.
You'll probably get it Monday or maybe Friday, and we're going to compare the results.
I like it. Let's do it.
Are you up for it?
Yeah, of course. That sounds like fun. And fun is the main objective. I often say that to the people that work with me. If you're not having fun, you're in the wrong job.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, as I've gotten to know you, I mean, and I keep getting to know you better. People say to me, "How do you separate work from your life?" And I go, "My work. I love what I do." And you're talking about hours. I mean, right now I'm averaging 3 hours a night sleep.
Wow. Okay.
And it's not, and I wake up and I feel fine. I don't know what it is, but we have to like what we do. And I always get from you. I've never, you see pictures of whether it's a news presenter or an actor or an actress or whatever, and you see them on camera and then you see them off camera and you go, they don't really love what they do. I've never seen you not up, not smiling, not, what's.
I'm here for a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually, that's partly why as well, when I started Musiio through my husband's encouragement, he said to me, Hazel, you're insane. You work 10, 12, 14, 16 hours a day, regardless. So why don't you work for yourself? Because I think I've probably made quite a lot of other people rich over the years. So, why not redirect that to be a little bit more self-serving? So, and I'm still the workaholic I always was, but now I also am the one that benefits from that. So it's a win-win.
It would be remiss if I didn't do this. I don't do it in a whatever. What have been some of the learnings? What have been some of the, I thought that would work, but it didn't, but I'm basically rejiggering the approach or the algorithm or the business model to refine it.
Yeah, there's probably quite a few. And as I say, I don't really sort of regret any decisions, because if I ever do make a wrong decision, I'm really comfortable course correcting or apologizing. But I feel like, very, very early on, it was my belief, and this came up when I was talking to the guy from Ames. I know Einar was on our panel last week, but with Martin, the CEO, we were on a panel together, and I said, when I first started Musiio, it was my belief that we don't need metadata anymore. We don't need tags, because if you fingerprint audio, technically the tags are superfluous. But I realized within the first month of talking to customers that customers in the music industry are not willing to give up their metadata. I don't know whether it's like they've just sunk so much into it that they're clinging onto it for dear life, or, there's a certain stability and comfort in just knowing that metadata is there and exists. But I realized very quickly that just because I believe that search works well without tags doesn't mean the industry's ready to jump into that pattern of working. So,
but couldn't you prove it?
Yes.
If you did something based on tags and something just based on fingerprinting and analysis and showing, look, we've done 5 of these and I've come up with the same result that you came up with tagging, or it was one of 3 results. It'd be an interesting experiment.
It would, but then I was just going to say, to do it, I would have to have built the tags anyway, and then I could do what I do now, which is just sell both. So I get to double dip on that. But what I did was I realized when we had a really effective search product, people still wanted the tag data. So we kind of reverse engineered the same technology to be able to also do tagging. And that those are our 2 most popular products now. We sell tags, we sell search, and we sell them both together. And they're popular on their own and in combination, depending on the client. So that was kind of a very, very early learning, which is just because I think the industry should be at a certain point. And I even noticed this because, we're 3.5 years old, how people viewed us back in the day, 3.5 years ago versus now. You build trust over time. And there are some things that only time can do. And I know I'm the same person that I was 3.5 years ago. I know that my deals were as solid 3.5 years ago. But some things, they just need the time to develop, and they can't be rushed. And so that's kind of another sort of learning that I've had as well.
But it is, it's frustrating sometimes
Oh, sure. Yeah.
when I was at EMI and Rhapsody started in 2001. I put the Rhapsody deal forward as a deal we should do, and I got the feedback of, you're trying to kill the music business. And the question was asked, what does McKinsey think about how streaming and subscription might affect the music industry? I said, I don't know. I'll call a friend at McKinsey and find out. And a week later, I delivered a report from McKinsey, how bullish they were on the future of subscription, because it took me a week to write the report and put McKinsey's logo on it. And then when they saw a report from McKinsey that McKinsey liked it, then we went ahead and did Rhapsody, and now here we are 20 years later in subscription, for all the reasons that everyone that was part of our team at the time said, a consistent revenue stream, a pretty level, base of customers that are paying for music every month, not 2 or 3 times a year, those kind of things. So sometimes you have to go through the steps, or come up with the, whatever it is to support something that is, sometimes obvious to you.
Yeah. And luckily for me, Ted, I've got one of the ex-Asia MDs of McKinsey on my cap table as an investor. So I feel like I wanted to check that box off early on.
That's great.
But it also it does. You're completely right. And I'm not going to name who it is, but you've got a 1 in 3 shot of getting it right. One of the major labels who does not have a deal with us. I would say every month, someone from one of their global offices will get in touch, like someone from their Latin office or someone from their Hong Kong office will get in touch and be like, we could really use this. And we'll get on a call with them. We'll show them what they can do. They'll be like, this is great. Can we trial it? And we're like, yeah, of course you can trial it. And then they're like, great, I'm going to kick this upstairs and see if I can move forward with a deal. And it comes back as a no every single time. Right. And I know that there's somebody in one of the big HQ offices who must be getting sick to death of their satellite offices going, can we have Musiio? And it always comes back as a no. So they know we're there. They know we're there.
I also will assume that when you were in a few of your various assignments, I learned early on I was not a permission executive. I was a forgiveness executive. Yes. In that, if you really believe in something, you do it, and hopefully you're right. If you're not, you take your lumps. Yeah. And I have convinced some people at the risk of their career, don't ask. Well, I have to ask somebody. Don't ask. Yeah. Do it, and then show them later and whatever. Yeah. I've never no one's ever been fired. You talk about playlisting. Talk about I don't know if you can talk about specific clients, but what type of client is using playlisting, and how effective has it been for you?
Great question. So, I mean, there's an element of playlisting to the Vans deal that we're currently doing, because we're playlisting top entries from each country for their A&R team to review. We also have a couple of streaming services. They tend to be either streaming services attached to telcos, streaming services based in non sort of primary locations. So I'm talking about Southeast Asian countries, right. African countries, Middle Eastern, you name it, somewhere that's like not the sort of the top tier. But these small to medium sized streaming services, they need their product to be just as good. And so we're an attractive partner for those guys, because we can give them the features and the usability of a top tier streaming service without them having to build it entirely in-house. So that's really been beneficial.
Very cool. Well, again, this will be a question you either say, look, I can answer, I can't answer. What's on the product roadmap?
Oh, no, great question. Very happy to answer that. I was just sharing it earlier. So we've got a couple of exciting things in terms of, we call it our Classifier Roadmap. And that basically just means all of the things that we teach the AI to recognize. So we want to teach it to recognize even more genres than it currently does, even more moods than it currently does. We want to extend the range of the BPM it can recognize. We want to be able to teach it to recognize time signatures. We're not sure if that's possible yet, but we're going to try and teach it. And another couple of things that we've had that we've got in beta that are really exciting is we've trained an AI to be able to find the best 30 seconds in any song. And that's been a really...
What?
Yeah, that's it. You're getting the exclusive, Ted. This is an exclusive. Haven't announced this anywhere else. We basically call it like our TikTok selection, but really it's short form content selection. Being able to pick a perfect 30 seconds out of any song, or the best 30 seconds.
Wow. And when you, as you're going through this process of creating this, what have been early results based as compared to like current results? It's getting it right in terms of like what you go, what in your mind is the best 30 seconds of the song. Wow. Because I had a conversation yesterday. A friend of mine, there's a guy named David Spiro. You should meet him someday. He started out in high school. His father had a TV show and had every band in the world on in the again, because I'm 200 years old, had, the Rolling Stones were on the show in Cleveland. Cool. And he now manages John Fogerty, ex of Creedence Clearwater. Mm-hmm. He manages, he managed Joe Walsh. He managed he got Cat Stevens to come out of retirement.
Yeah.
Basically to play. Cat Stevens was never Yusuf.
Oh yeah.
I can't
he changed
remember
his name, didn't he?
Right. He came out. He was never going to play music again. He plays music again now. Wonderful guy. And we were talking about how we found music as a kid, and and the whole social side of it. And does social still figure in to what you do at all? I mean, if you look at like the Echo Nest, which Spotify bought, it was a combination of algorithm and social input.
Yeah. So funnily enough, the social input side of it is the more developed, the more advanced, and it tends to be that when we work with our customers, they already have that bit down. And that's why we chose to specialize very strictly in this sort of AI audiophile fingerprint, because we do something that's very hard to do that not very many people have nailed. And that means that we can go to another company and sure, they've already got their social data, their sales data, their usage data, their tracking data. And if they just layer in our data, now they're really cooking. So
can they pull that in? Will they play nice with each other? Oh, okay, good. There's somebody I'm not going to mention who we know that I've had long. I can't win the argument, but he doesn't want to mix his data in with anybody else's data.
Oh, you know what?
And I'm like, you're an island onto yourself. And like, I said, who are you I said to him, who are you partnering with? He goes, nobody. And I went, yes, but what you've got, and you add that to what Musiio has. I was gave him a few different examples. I go, then you have a more potent result that is more actionable. And he went, we're doing fine without that.
And to be honest, it's the way we work is it's still a choice. So we do have certain clients who they want to give us all their data. They want to give us all the feedback possible because they want the algorithms to improve.
Exactly.
They want their product to be amazing. But we do still come across the odd client who is like, and no one else will see this. No one else will touch this audio. This won't be used to improve anything else. And to be honest, we can still cope with that. So I'd say it's about 50-50. But we don't need their data to make what we already have work. They can still buy what we already have. So yeah, and that was my goal from the beginning. I know a couple of our competitors, one in particular, Feed Forward, based in London, they're going the full, you got to go all in. Like you got to put your data in, everyone gets the benefit, everyone gets the output. Right. And that's, and I respect that they've chosen to like, put their foot down and say, this is who we are and this is what we believe and this is what we're going to build. I've always been a little bit more on this sort of amenable side. What does the customer want? I could do both. We will do both. So I kind of float more in the middle.
But when you, it is frustrating when you say, look, I can give you a much better outcome with a more rounded picture of what's going on. I remember, I'll do the short version of this. I was Amazon's consultant to build a music store 23 years ago. And they would ask me questions, and they were really like vague questions. And I go, could you give me some more context? And they went, no. And I went, if you give me more context, I can give you a more fully formed answer. And they went, give us the answer you have without knowing any more about, what if we did something like, I said, give me an example. Yeah. And they went, no. And it was really, really frustrating, but we still got there. I have a final question for you to wrap it up, and I don't know what the answer is.
Right.
And then you get and then you get the last word, which is a luxury here. Is Pandora a client?
No.
How is Pandora coping with their original model, or have they built their own solution?
Well, I would absolutely love Pandora to be a client, because I still stand by the fact that they have one of the best data sets in the world. They annotated 1 million songs by hand. Whew, I would kill to have that data. We could build some real sweet models. However, what I suspect is that they will have gone the other way, because that data set is incredibly valuable. I imagine that they've hired a team to try and sort of replicate what we have internally. I have absolutely no idea how far down the line they are with it. I don't know what success they've had, but that to them would probably be the better outcome. I imagine that they're trying to build it internally, or that they already have to an extent. That would be but I still have shares in the company, so I want them to do well. Right.
I do have a follow-up question, and then I want to give you, but this is sort of, the follow-up question is giving you the final word. You get a call next week, and I'm just being hypothetical. Microsoft wants to buy you for $1 billion, and they buy you, and you stay on for a year, and you then step out. What would you like to do next? What would be the next thing for Hazel Savage?
Well,
that in media, in tech, in health, in teaching kids how to grow their own corn. Well,
I would take a little break first, right, Ted?
Right.
I would take a little break, and I currently own 2 3-legged Persian cats, so there's always an outside chance that I just go full crazy cat lady, and I'm adopting all the cats with the missing parts and the health issues, and I just go real into that. That's always a backup option. I just go full crazy cat lady. But probably a more realistic answer, because I am still a workaholic, and so I'm never just gonna go do nothing or just not do something probably quite difficult. But I would like to get more into the startup incubator scene. I would love to add more value to either the music tech specific incubators of the world, like Abbey Road Red or Techstars Music, or even just the more deep tech like EF, like Entrepreneur First in London.
I will go commercial right here. I mean, we did part of Media Tech Ventures is we do a thing called the Collective, which is a media tech incubator out of Austin, Chicago. And now since pandemic, we've done it, remotely all over the world.
Well, write it down. I want a job, so put me down.
Okay. We have an opening for you. Look, perfect. I could go on for another half an hour with you. I won't do that. We'll do a part 2 sometime. This has been everything I'd hoped it would be. I hope I didn't talk too much, but everyone tells me. Maggie will tell me in a minute you talk too much again. But she says hi. And I will see you next week on Mark Frieser's Sync Summit panel. It'll be noon New York time, so 9 o'clock LA time. And it's syncsummit.com. And I'll see you at Mondo, hopefully.
You will? Yeah.
I will be at Mondo. And thanks so much.
Thank you for having me, Ted. Absolutely.
So I'm just going to say for Jeremiah, I'm just going to say goodbye to Hazel and goodbye for me. This has been Connected with Hazel Savage, CEO and co-founder of Musiio. And God bless you. This has been great.